see who we have here. Barbara.
For both of you gentlemen, back to Russia, if I may. First, Mr. Secretary, this agreement that the Secretary of State is working on clearly mainly involves military matters for the United States. So can you clarify, I have to assume that both of you are involved in the discussions and have seen the proposed agreement. So what is, and if not, can you please say that you have not? But what is the bottom line for both of you? Do you right now trust the Russians enough to share classified intelligence with them about targeting and what U.S. pilots are doing? Do you trust them right now? And that's for both of you, your bottom line on trusting the Russians. And also, General Dunford, I recall that last summer, the JCS unclassified email got hacked for about 3 weeks, and it was widely said that you had every reason to believe it was the Russians that did it. So what is the level of confidence that the Russians aren't hacking into you guys? And finally, do you believe, and I realize it's somewhat a politically shaded question, do you believe there should be a means test for NATO participation? In other words, the notion that the U.S. would only come to the defense of a NATO member if they were making a certain financial contribution?
I'll start off with the question of Russians and the trust. I mean, yeah, of course we're watching those negotiations and discussing those negotiations with Secretary Kerry all the time. They're not based on trust. They're based on a transaction and on mutual interest, to the extent and when and as we're able to identify that with the Russians. Now, our interests are quite clear. Our interests are to see a political transition promoted, number one, and that puts an end to the violence in Syria and gives the Syrian people back a government and a life that they deserve. And second, the defeat of extremism there and in Iraq. And so those are the U.S. interests, and to the extent that Russia can align with U.S. interests, we work with them, as it has been the case in Iran, North Korea, and other places where U.S. and Russian interests have aligned. It's the alignment of those interests that Secretary Kerry is exploring. That's what it's about. Secretary?
Do you, in all candor, sir, do you trust, fine, but do you trust them enough right now to live up to any signature on a piece of paper?
Hey Barbara, let me go off the theme the Secretary started with, because you asked, were we involved or have we been involved in the framing of the discussion that Secretary Kerry is involved with. And so what my input would be along the lines of, and has been along the lines of, we have a transaction. It's not based on trust, and it's based on measures that we take to ensure that our operational security is protected.
So would you, and I would like your answer.
Let me go on to the other two questions one more time at this one.
Well, no, I mean, do you trust their signature on a piece of paper? And emails, hacking, and means test for NATO.
Barbara, we're not entering in a transaction that's founded on trust. There'll be specific procedures and processes in any transaction we might have with the Russians that would account for protecting our operational security.
And emails in NATO, sir?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm not going to answer the NATO question, as you correctly pointed out when you looked at me and said, I know this is a political question, so I won't answer that. But with regard to Russian hacking, we're well aware of state actors, to include Russia, that have attempted to penetrate our network. The #1 responsibility of the United States Cyber Command is to protect the network. And so we focus on that every day.
Idris?
Sure.